Hey everybody, welcome back to Brittany Unfiltered. Happy Tuesday. As you can see, I'm actually back in my normal studio this time. Last time I was out of town, so we kind of did a talk to the laptop, sort of more of a homemade deal. Hope that didn't bother anybody. But back in my normal studio today, happy to be with you guys. I hope it's sunny where you're at. I hope you're having nice weather, because I know that they've always said that California is the state that's supposedly going to fall into the sea, but I've kind of been thinking that with all the rain that the East Coast has been getting lately, that might actually end up being us. So I kind of feel like I've been living in a swampland here recently. Not the DC swampland, that's actually a little farther north, but the literal swampland where I can't like step out of my house without boots on. But thankfully we had a sunny day today. Hope it's good where you're at. Just a couple of things before we get started here. We're still working on making sure that we can upload this to places like iTunes and Google Play and Spotify. So I know that's something that some of you guys had mentioned, that you would like to be able to download and listen to this in your car when you're on your way to work or dropping the kids off to school or going to school yourself, whatever. We are working on that. Gonna let you know as soon as that happens. Right now, though, we are still live on Facebook and YouTube at 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. If you don't manage to catch a video live, that's totally fine. The videos will be available on those platforms afterwards, so just go back and listen to them whenever you have time. And make sure that you're sending me your comments and your messages so that I'll know what you guys want to talk about. If there's something in the news that you want to discuss, something you want to get more into, questions you have, things you want to discuss here with other people, just definitely let me know so that we can talk about some of those issues. I did want to get into a couple of things that have happened this week, though, that I think are really interesting that you may not have heard about. So obviously that's something I always want to bring to your attention if I feel like there's a big story or something that is not being talked about enough. That's kind of something that I want to harp on. And the first is Kirsten Gillibrand. So hopefully you have heard this story. Hopefully this is not something that I'm telling you for the very first time. You definitely did not hear it on the mainstream media news networks, though. I can tell you that ABC and NBC did not even cover this story. Not even at all. Not even a little bit. CBS only covered it on CBS this morning, literally for about 50 seconds. That's all the airtime they gave it. So unless you are subscribed to some conservative news outlets, you probably didn't hear this. If you did, you probably didn't hear about it in a lot of detail. And that is the fact that Lil Miss #MeToo, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is supposedly this huge champion for protecting women against sexual harassment and this huge proponent of holding men accountable for making advances to women that are unwanted. She's been a huge advocate for cleaning the military of, sexual assaulters and harassers, and this has been a huge part of her platform back for the last couple of years, and probably heading into the 2020 presidential primaries. Again, she's one of 4 female candidates here. This is something that she likes to tout, right? That she's this huge champion of women, and she's all for protecting women and changing congressional rules to make it harder for men to harass people in the halls of Congress. Turns out she's a big fat liar. At least that's according to Politico. I'm actually going to give Politico credit for exposing this story. This is something that they actually did. It turns out that there was a female staffer who last summer, so we're talking about almost a year ago at this point, a female staffer last summer actually resigned from Gillibrand's senatorial office because she says that she had been repeatedly harassed by an older male staffer and that the office had done nothing about it. So this is kind of where the story starts. Politico got into this. They've got a really long expose on their website talking about all the details of this. And I know I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but his name was apparently Abbas Malik, I think is how you pronounce it. If not, I don't really care, because apparently he was a sleaze. So this young woman, who is unnamed, said that this guy, who was 10 years older than her and married, I know that doesn't matter to a lot of people these days, but 10 years older than her and married, had repeatedly sexually harassed her in the workplace. He had made advances towards her and other female staffers. He had joked about sexual abuse. He had joked about rape. Apparently there was one woman who said that he had joked about another female staffer who, quote, couldn't get laid unless she was raped. Again, I know that's rough. I'm quoting that here. But I'm saying that to point out that this is not like oh, he maybe winked at somebody or he brushed up against somebody accidentally and they kind of misread the situation. These are apparently very forward things that he was saying and he was doing to female staffers, and it was pretty well documented. So this woman reportedly goes to Gillibrand's office, makes her complaints, and gives 3 weeks notice and says, look, I'm going to leave if you guys don't deal with this. I have told you about this repeatedly. If you don't handle it, I'm going to leave. So she ends up leaving because Gillibrand's office doesn't do anything about it. So she writes this letter explaining why she's resigning and leaves. Politico then gets involved and asks Gillibrand why she let this young woman walk and whether they had even looked into these allegations. Gillibrand responds to Politico by kind of saying, well, look, this guy didn't, we don't think he did what she accused him of doing. And, her accusations weren't really credible. We want to believe all women, but that's not what happened in this case. We found that nothing had happened. It turns out this was not just some staffer. This guy was not just, some dude who organizes her papers on her desk or something like that. He was one of the top level staffers in Gillibrand's office. This is Politico's description of this guy. He became such a constant presence in Gillibrand's life, he had a set of keys to her home and often drove her children to school with her, that some staffers dubbed him the keeper of her purse. Okay, that was this guy. So he's clearly somebody that is in her trust circle, somebody that she thinks very highly of. So this female staffer ends up resigning, saying, you guys aren't doing anything about him sexually harassing me. And this guy ends up keeping his job. Well, Politico then gets involved and decides that they're going to do their own investigation. Upon launching their investigation, they found that there had been a slew of sexual misconduct allegations against this guy by numerous female staffers. It only started with this one who resigned. They looked into it and found numerous substantiated claims that he had come on to women, that he had propositioned women, that he had made rape jokes to women. This was apparently something that was happening quite a bit. He was well known for this in the office. So Politico does their own investigation and turns over their findings to Gillibrand's office and says, hey, look, we found all this stuff on this guy that you supposedly said was clean. What now? Because we found that he did all of this stuff. You got numerous allegations of this by multiple women. Now what? 2 weeks later, the guy gets fired. 2 weeks after Politico finally reveals what they had found in their own investigation. Gillibrand's office opens their own investigation and the guy gets canned. So again, you've got a woman who resigned last summer who made these same allegations. Gillibrand's office didn't do anything about it until Politico gets involved, which I don't know about you, but seems an awful lot like an attempt to avoid some really, really bad press. That's what this all looks like to me, because here you've got a senator and 2020 presidential candidate who makes it part of her platform, a cornerstone of her platform, that we're going to believe all women and we're going to trust all women and we're going to defend all women. And here she's got this happening in her own office. And she's not only not doing anything about it, she's defending the guy. She's coming out and defending the guy. If that doesn't spell out hypocrisy, I really don't know what it's kind of like when Bernie Sanders tweets about the poor little, 10 percenters down at the bottom from one of the 3 houses that he owns. All right, they're not in it for the little person. They're not in it to defend people. That's a total and complete sham. So first of all, I want to point out just how ridiculous that is, because you can count on the fact that the media is not going to report this, and she's going to use this as part of her 2020 presidential platform, that she's going to stand up for women and women's rights and women's, rights in the workplace and their ability to not be harassed. And it's all bullcrap. It's talking points, because she can't even do that in her own office. The second point that I want to point out here is, look, if you're a lady out there, first of all, this kind of stuff happens. It really sucks. It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of you. I understand that. No one is going to just defend you. The Democrats are definitely not just going to defend you, because they ignore sexual harassment and sexual assault all the time. All right, does Bill Clinton ring a bell? Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax, is still in office after 2 credible sexual assault claims have been made against him. That's after these same people raked Brett Kavanaugh over the coals for unsubstantiated allegations. This guy's got 2 pretty credible allegations made against him, and he's still in office. They don't hold their own accountable. So here's my suggestion. If you want to protect yourself, if this is something that you're concerned about, first of all, go out, get a gun, learn how to use it, and then fight for your right to carry it on your person. All right, that's step number 1. That's how you defend yourself. Step number 2, if you're being harassed in the workplace, say something and say it loudly. All right, as a matter of fact, say it to the sleazeball's face. Look right at him and tell him to back, because that usually does the trick. But again, this idea that Democrats are going to come in and protect women, that they're for women, that they stand up for women, it's a talking point. It's a political pandering point because, again, they love to seize on victimhood. Hey guys, welcome back to Brittany Unfiltered. Hope you guys stuck with us throughout the break. There's another story that I wanted to talk about today that, again, this one you may have heard about. You probably didn't hear about a lot of the details, but it's on the topic of immigration, which, look, I know is kind of an overarching theme from the past couple of years. And I think it's something that everybody's kind of getting a little bit weary of simply because it's been turned into this political football between Republicans and Democrats. And somehow the actual American people kind of get lost in that. Because look, immigration is one of those issues that it actually affects people's lives. It actually affects people's communities. It definitely affects people's tax dollars. And I feel like that kind of just gets thrown out when it comes to Congress and the White House batting this thing back and forth over who's going to win and talking about billions of dollars. So I think people get a little bit weary of it. But it's something that is incredibly, incredibly important. And I want to start off by saying, look, I don't know how out of your gourd you have to be to not think that this is a national crisis. You might not think that it's necessarily, you might not think it's something that Trump should use national emergency powers for. Again, there's questions of constitutionality about that. People have different opinions about that. My main concern with that whole thing is that I'm concerned that precedent will be set, and then when you've got a Democrat president in office, that it will be something that they can use to declare a state of emergency over climate change or gun control or any other wacky things that they like to use to take control over some sector of our lives. So I have a couple of concerns about the use of the national emergency powers, but there's absolutely no debate whatsoever, or there at least shouldn't be, over whether or not this is a national crisis. All right. This is something that not only is it a humanitarian crisis at the border, not only do we have people coming across in droves, you've got women who are being sexually assaulted trying to come across the border. You've got children who are being trafficked, unaccompanied minors coming across. We don't have enough places to put them. We've got diseases running rampant. We don't have enough border agents to deal with it. This is a massive humanitarian crisis. And here's something that the Democrats don't like to talk about because I don't know. They have this perception that money just kind of springs up out of the ground like daisies or something. We actually have a finite amount of it, believe it or not. Even if you taxed all the billionaires to the nth dollar, you're still going to have a finite amount of money. And the simple fact is we don't have enough money to continue having an influx of illegal aliens into this country that we have to take care of, and we have to provide food and clothing and housing and medical care for, only to let them into the United States, which then they get on the welfare dole. We don't have enough money to do it. All right, so we've got a crisis on 2 fronts here. 2 fronts. And if you hadn't heard the latest numbers, by the way, which again is not something that the news is going to tell you, here's just a couple from Customs and Border Protection. They estimate that roughly 3,000 illegal aliens are apprehended per day. That was the estimate that CBP gave before Congress just last week. In the Yuma sector alone, which is not even the biggest sector of the southwest border, that would be the Rio Grande sector. In the Yuma sector alone, over last weekend, 750 illegal aliens were caught in that one sector alone. 137 of them had to be given some kind of medical attention, and for things ranging from pregnancy complications, and I'm reading here, pregnancy complications, scabies, chicken pox. I mean, these are the things that these people are coming across with. Again, doesn't necessarily make them, bad people, but they are people that shouldn't be coming here illegally, and they are people who are bringing in diseases, and they are people who are sucking up taxpayer dollars because then they have to be transported to local hospitals. So you have this constant influx that the left never wants to talk about. They don't actually want to talk about the numbers. They don't want to talk about what it's costing. They don't want to talk about what's actually happening to these people on their journey to the United States. They absolutely love it when something terrible happens that they can try to blame on ICE or border agents. They love to do that because they have this obsession with calling people Nazis, especially if they work for the Trump administration. But they don't want to talk about how this is a humanitarian crisis, this is a taxpayer crisis, and it needs to be addressed right now. What they do love to do, apparently, is pass a bunch of new laws letting illegal aliens have pathways to citizenship. That's what they do love to do. So rather than address what's happening at our border, rather than take a look at the hard evidence that shows, hey, dummies, where there's not a wall, people come across. Where there is a wall, it actually stops illegal immigration. Those are basic numbers that are out there. We've talked about this ad nauseum now for months. But rather than look at that, they're too busy. The party of, not letting foreigners meddle in our elections are too busy trying to get foreigners on our voter rolls to meddle in our elections, that they're trying to pass all these new laws that put illegal aliens on a pathway to citizenship. Here's the latest one. They introduced it today. It's kind of an expansion of the DREAM Act. You remember the DREAM Act that said, if you come across as a child, then we'll let you stay and we'll give you all this help and all this aid and you can go to school and blah, blah, blah. It was a President Obama, feely good nonsense that he completely went around Congress to do. It was completely unconstitutional. Well, now House Democrats want to expand that. So while President Trump is asking for another almost $9 billion to help build the wall to secure the border and stop illegal immigration, House Democrats are busy trying to pass legislation that would grant upwards of 2 million people pathways to citizenship, not pathways to legalization. Okay, not pathways to work permits, not pathways to, hey, come out of the shadows and we know who you are. Pathways to citizenship, which then, of course, confers all the rights of citizens, including the right to vote. All right, so you have to be a real dummy not to see where all of this is going here. The new legislation would expand deferred deportation rights to Dreamers. It would make them eligible for in-state college tuition and taxpayer-backed financial aid and give them a direct pathway to citizenship. On top of that, it also would expand a pathway to citizenship for TPS holders. Now, TPS, temporary protected status, this is a status that it's supposed to be temporary, as the name implies. It's hardly ever temporary. So this is a status that is given to certain people from certain nations who basically, if you're over here in this country and you're on a 2-year work visa, and in those 2 years, there's an earthquake in your home country and half your country gets swallowed up by a sinkhole or something, and you can't go back, we say, okay, look, you were here, you were working, sorry about your sinkhole, that really sucks, that's a big fat bummer, clearly you can't go back home, we're going to let you stay here and work until your country fixes the sinkhole, and then you're going to go back. The countries never fix the sinkholes, and the people never go back. So we just keep granting 2- and 3-year extensions to these nations and to these people who are here living in the United States, some of them who have been here now for upwards of 2-3 decades. All right, so for example, we gave El Salvador a TPS designation 18 years ago because of an earthquake that happened in 2001. Still TPS designated. All right, still people who are here in this country who were granted that designation almost 20 years ago, who are still here and have never had to go back home. We gave it to Nicaragua and Honduras because Hurricane Mitch struck there in 1998. They're still under TPS status. So again, this is something that it's supposed to be temporary. It never is. Well, now Democrats are making the argument that, oh, well, these people have been here so long, we can't possibly send them home. They've got kids here now. They're practically American, so we have to send them here. Or we have to keep them here, rather. And now we have to offer them citizenship. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that awfully convenient? Well, we can't send them home because their country sucks so bad. We'll just let them stay here until their country doesn't suck so bad. Well, now they've been here for so long, we can't possibly send them home at all. So we should just make them citizens. Oh, and by the way, hashtag vote Democrat. Because ultimately that is what this comes down to. That is what this whole goal is towards. That's the whole goal of Democrats pushing illegal immigration in the first place. This is all about stocking voter rolls. This is all about expanding their voter base. We all know it. This could not be more obvious. It's very, very clear. Just to let y'all know, by the way, the 2.1 million people that this would grant citizen or a pathway to citizenship for, according to the Washington Post, that's nearly 3 times the 674,000 illegal aliens that enrolled in DACA. So we're talking about a massive expansion here. Wanted to bring that to your attention. Hope that was something that you had already heard about. If it's not, sorry for ticking you off, but that's what House Democrats were up to today, instead of protecting our country and protecting the American taxpayer. Thank you so much, though. We are out of time. Tried to keep it a little bit shorter today, so hope you guys stuck with us. Thank you so much. We're going to be back next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, live on Facebook and YouTube. Again, gonna let you guys know when we get up on iTunes so you can download that. Make sure that you're here next Tuesday for another episode of Brittany Unfiltered, and we will see you back next time.